But yeah, it brought, as today did, brought a lot of stuff back to the surface. And that's not a bad thing, you know, because probably at the time, my wife and I just got on with life because you have to.
Hi, and welcome to the Golf Yourself Healthy podcast. I'm Kris Lynch, I'm your host. I'm also the creator and founder of Golf Yourself Healthy. You will know, if you are a regular listener to this podcast, that we are big on having deep, meaningful and philosophical conversations about golf and life. And I don't think there's any better demonstration of this than in the episode that you are about to listen to. For any of you who listen regularly will know my son Innes, who I lost in February 2023, he is my inspiration for starting Golf Yourself Healthy. When the opportunity presented itself to take part in an all-day golf challenge with fellow bereaved fathers, fellow golf lovers in support of SANS, one of the UK's leading baby loss charities, I felt compelled to say yes. I'm so glad I did say yes in the end, because not only did we raise a huge sum of money for SANS, well over £1,800, a sum of money which will help the charity to continue to offer support to other bereaved families like mine who have experienced baby loss, but to have also had the opportunity to do something I love, to play 54 holes of golf in a day. I did love it. My joints and bones and everything is just about still aching a little bit now after completing that. And I say that about 3 or 4 days on after Friday the 14th of June, which is when we did the challenge. I did this challenge at a beautiful golf club, beautiful golf course in the form of Prince's Golf Club in Sandwich, Kent. I did the challenge in the company of my friends Ben Seabrook and Mike Harris. Ben Seabrook, again, if you listen to this podcast regularly, will know Ben is a regular guest, a contributor to the Golf Yourself Healthy podcast. Meanwhile, Mike is someone who some of you may know. You may know Mike from his influence and his experience in golf media, having for many years been the editor of the Golf Monthly magazine. But what brought Ben and I together, and what created that new friendship between myself, Mike and Ben, what deepened that existing friendship between myself and Ben, was this shared experience of having lost children, of having lost our precious babies, Christopher, Dylan, Innes and Rohaze. The conversation you're about to listen to was recorded at the end of the day, somewhere around 9 or 10 p.m. at night, following a full day of golf, where we felt physically and mentally tired. We felt emotional. But we allowed ourselves to feel emotional and to be vulnerable in this conversation. This conversation is raw. It's allowing ourselves to talk about our grief, our feelings, and our emotions. But at the same time, we have a laugh. We reflect on the day that was, all the fun memories and experiences that we had playing golf together. And really, we do it in the spirit of companionship, camaraderie, friendship, shared experience, offering hope and inspiration to others out there who have experienced similar things to what we have. So I hope you do enjoy listening to this, because although it may be a difficult listen at times, I believe it's an enjoyable and very authentic listen. Before we head over into the conversation, I would like to ask you a small favour. I am trying hard to grow the Golf Yourself Healthy podcast at the moment, and one of the best ways that you can help me do that, and one of the free ways in which you can help me do that, is by following this podcast on your podcasting platform of choice. It's a very quick and easy thing to do. If, for example, you're on Apple or you're on Spotify, just as an example, because we are available on most major podcasting platforms, go into the podcast, find the podcast. The link directly to those sites is in the show notes. And when you go there, click on the follow button. Because what's then in it for you is by following, you automatically get notified and it will even, in some cases, automatically download new episodes of the Golf Yourself Healthy podcast when they are available. Please do follow us. It'll help me, and I believe it'll help you too. Let's head into the conversation. Gentlemen, firstly, well done on completing today's Golf for Sands challenge. I think we should give ourselves a solid pat on the back and a big well done. I'm sure in the course of this conversation we're going to get into a number of reflections and delving into the day that has been and the highlights and all the good bits for ours and, you know, our own reflection benefit, but for the listeners' benefit as well. But just to kick us off, in a few words, how would you describe today? You can start, Ben.
Phenomenal, I would say. I've surprised myself with the fact that I was able to play as many holes as we did, because I had some serious concerns about the fact that my physical condition is not in its peak performance. But yeah, I mean, the course is fantastic, really hospitable, staff everywhere we went. Obviously, our host, Mr. Harris, was exemplary. But yeah, it's been a really good day. Despite the crap weather in the morning, by the time we got out of that first bit of rain by about 6:30 in the morning, it was really, really pleasant after that. And I like the layouts. The layouts were pretty cool. Very different, each of them. I like seeing the course in front of me. So I liked the shore and the dunes, to be fair. I thought they were both good tracks. We only played the Himalayas once, but that was interesting as well. It was good. Enjoyed it.
Nice one. Mike?
I always say golf, for me, these days, is about who I play with and where I play. How I personally hit the golf ball, the score I have, is secondary. And I think we all hit some good shots today. We all hit some bad shots too. We all lost a lot of golf balls because the rough was pretty savage and the wind was really up. But we had some great conversations, and the range of things we talked about, from serious stuff, I guess, from why we're here together today, to talked about what's happening in the Euros, talked about everything and nothing. And I think for me, that's why I love golf, the ability it has to bring people together. And I'd actually never met you guys in person before we rocked up in the car park at 4:45 this morning. Kris, I'd obviously spoken to you a number of times, and the three of us had a video call before, but I think the ability golf has to bring people from different parts of the country, different backgrounds, it's a common love that you have, and I think it gives a great platform for discussion. I think we found that out today.
Definitely, yeah. It's probably worth me saying at this point, because Mike, as you know, because you listened to the most recent pod that Ben and I did, I was giving it the big ones about kind of getting 73 holes. But what I will say is, it wasn't our fault, Gov. You know, the weather wasn't on our side this morning. It was a busy course out there today. But if I'm being really honest, I think the way my feet feel at the moment and the way my body was feeling towards the end of it, I'm not sure I could have managed another 18 or 19 holes. But it's been a great day. I would echo everything that you guys have said. Just picking up on something you said there, Mike, I think, I've reflected on how, for me personally, in the relatively short time that Golf Yourself Healthy has been going, it's given me a lot. And I think I've spoken to you guys today, and over time now, actually, because obviously I've known Ben a long time and he's been part of the pod with me for a while. Mike, like you say, you and I have had a few conversations in the run up to this, but I think it's been a very cathartic experience for me being able to talk about my son and how he's been the inspiration for me doing this. But then I think, like you say, Mike, it's golf, likewise for me, is about the people that get to play it with. And when I'm with kind of like-minded people who have shared experiences, we've got things in common that we can talk about, it puts me at ease. And I play my best golf when I'm in that kind of zone. So I thank you both very much for your company today. I think it's great just to even pause for a moment and just actually reflect on why we've done this today. Because we obviously miss our sons and daughters very much, and I suppose maybe wish that hadn't been their fate or even our fate. But actually, I think, again, if I may say in some way, that I think the fact that we've been brought together in some way by the experience that we've had, and I think like I say, we'll get into a moment in talking about a bit about the kind of Golf for Sands challenge. I think it's been cool that we've connected a bit with Sands, and I'm going to maybe just mention, we've connected with a few other golfers who've been doing the Golf for Sands challenge as well. I think maybe Ben took a lead on talking about a few thank yous. I think it's probably a worthwhile time to do that now, and because when this podcast goes out, I'm sure you'll both join me in saying want to use this as an opportunity to thank the people, in particular those who have hosted us here today at Prince's, because they've been extremely hospitable, as Ben said. Mike, thank you. Obviously, you've teed us up to play here today. You're a member here, and what a fantastic property, what a fantastic set of facilities they've got here. I think we've talked a little bit on the Golf Yourself Healthy podcast. Both, for example, Ben and I have got experiences of playing lots of different types of golf courses and visiting lots of different golf clubs. And with this, at Prince's Golf Club being a top 100 UK and Ireland golf club and course, that, at least in my experience, does not actually necessarily automatically relate to, yes, the course itself might be fantastic, but the overall experience that you get when you come on the property and the feeling that you get may not necessarily always match it. But it was fantastic here. I mean, the staff are lovely. Couldn't have done more for us, I don't think, really. Food is exceptional. The facilities are great. Everything's great. And I said to you as well, Mike, the course, actually, all 3 9-hole tracks, what I really appreciated about it is they're not heavily manicured. There's just something just right about it. And I, for one, so, although the rough was gnarly at times, but
especially in the morning when it was wet, it was absolutely brutal in that stuff. Nothing was bouncing, so you couldn't even see where it had actually gone in.
Yeah.
And then you'd spend 3 minutes, you were allotted 3 minutes looking for your ball, with your feet getting absolutely soaked because the grass was that wet. Obviously, with it being so wet and so warm, as we talked about, it's so thick and luscious in there. Whereas normally by this time of year, you'd like to think it's dried out a little bit and it's a little bit more wispy. So you can at least find your ball, let alone have some sort of shot out of there. But yeah, it was
a challenge.
It was tough. Yeah, it was tough. And I think because of the way in which it's framed as well, like even when I was saying, like, I like the court being able to see the hole in front of me, because a lot of the times we would sit there and we'd say, right, you'd joke and you'd say, well, the line is obviously just hit it down the middle, right? And that's fine. But there was so little first cut, second cut, and then immediately foot deep rough. But that's, you have to kind of just take that as part of the experience, right? You're looking at it from a perspective of, if I go in there, the likelihood is I'm not going to find one. So I might just have to drop one out. And I was fortunate enough to find a couple of other balls, even if they weren't my own ones, which I then recycled, put back in play, did my bit for the environment, and then lost those as well. So,
well, I think I'm going to dive into this a bit more, because I think, for example, Ben has probably kept Titleist in business for a good while longer with the amount that you spent once today.
18 balls today.
Yeah. But just
54 holes. That's
but actually, I think that's such a testament to what a great day we had, that we all lost a lot of golf balls. We all played some good shots. We all played some bad shots, but we still had a lot of fun. And I think that's, because of the company, because of the motivation we had to come and play together, and because Prince is a really special place. When I had the opportunity to join earlier this year, I'm already a member of 4 golf clubs. It's like, do I really need to join? Actually, I love it. I've been coming down here for the best part of 20 years, and to see the improvements that have been made to the golf courses, the off-course facilities, the lodge where we're staying, it's just a really special place to come and play golf. I'd say great golf, brilliant atmosphere, service is fantastic. It's laid back, great membership. People are here because it's what they love playing golf and they love socializing, and I think that really comes across in the whole experience. And we sort of joke about how many golf balls we've lost and the fact we all played some pretty poor shots out there. But we can laugh about it because it was, had a good time.
Yeah, exactly. But again, the reason why we were doing it, at least I found, took the seriousness out of it. It just instantly put me in this place of just you're doing it for a greater cause, really. So
today we were, but I would imagine I wouldn't want to come here and take my golf too seriously. I think I would struggle. Like if I was a member here like you and you're getting down here regularly, I don't think I could live with myself if I was really taking my golf seriously, because my golf isn't good enough. So to be able to go out and lose ball, not really care.
I have to say it's not always as difficult as it was. I think that was peak difficulty today, because
we picked a good
the
time
wind
to come
was
and play.
really up. 2-3 club wind, gusting, sort of to mid 20s to mid 30s, and the rough was up. It's that we've had that warm weather, wet weather. I say normally we're starting to thin out a bit now, but it's an amazing winter golf. Come back here in the winter, and I wouldn't say you can hit it anywhere, but it's certainly a lot more generous, and it's great. It's year-round playable. Just love being by the seaside.
Yeah, that sound. I can't remember what hole we were in, but at one point I looked up at the sky and there was like blue sky and clouds, and I could hear the birds in the dunes near where we were, and I could hear the sea and also hear the wind, and I just sort of closed my eyes, and I just thought, that's awesome. Like that's such a cool set of all of my sensory things going off. I think we talked about the fact that ideally my wife and I want to move out to the coast, and it's exactly that kind of reason that we would want to do that, to hear the sound of the sea and all of that kind of stuff. It's just, there's something special about that. And there's no other sports I can think of where you're actually going to be able to play in that kind of environment. Yeah,
I think, and playing sort of coastal golf, or even just coming to very storied golf venues like this, and just in a nice part of the country. I used the expression with you both, felt like you were driving to the end of the earth. Like it kind of just, because you feel like it's a destination, when you're coming to a place like this, and it's just felt very, although the course was busy and it did at times make, that's obviously made it difficult for us to get in, and the amount of golf that we did want to get in, it never looked busy, if you get what I mean, today.
There were several times, obviously at 5:30 in the morning, it was Millionaires Golf, because there was us and the greenkeeping team out there. But then at periods, during the morning and the afternoon, it felt like we were the only three on the golf course. So
definitely at one stage when we were playing that last round. Yeah. And I think I said, I can't remember, I think we might have been going to the third hole, and I was like, this is Millionaires Golf. And I think I saw one other person on the course at that point. And we've talked about this before, but that's why I like playing at the time of day that I like playing. I like playing later in the evening, because I like to feel like I'm far more important than I actually am, I suppose. Maybe that's what it is. Don't know.
So let's spend a little bit talking about kind of why we've done it. So I think, again, so just maybe the headline here is, SANS, again, in the last couple of podcasts, Ben and I have talked about SANS as a charity. They are one of the UK's leading baby loss charities, who do a power of work and research, working, with other charities as well, to really ultimately see how more babies' lives can be saved, I suppose, in the front. And is that fair to say, Ben, based on your...
Well, in my experience with them, the focus on supporting other people that have been through that type of thing was the thing that I took away most from it. And it has been a long time since I had engaged. I would say engaged with SANS. That's probably not fair, because I still get, the newsletters, and I still read a lot of the stuff that they're doing. But certainly from my perspective, the benefit that Brian and I had from SANS was going to those support groups effectively. Yeah. And I can't remember where we were, somewhere in Norfolk we went. And I think that there was a lady there who'd had lost her child a long time, probably a decade before, and she had been telling us about her fundraising, right? And maybe that was kind of the inspiration for Brian to get as involved with her fundraising as she has done over the years. But she had raised something like £50,000. I think she went up Mount Kilimanjaro or something like that, and had raised 50 grand in her... I think it was her daughter's name. I can't really remember. It was a long time ago now. And just hearing that kind of thing is it's really inspiring, because it makes you think that there are other ways of channeling your grief. And I thought that was the key takeaway for me, was about just making you not feel quite so alone in it, and actually making you realise that there is different ways of handling the kind of the shit that you're dealt, which is quite important, I think.
Yeah. We have, through the incredible generosity of friends, family, colleagues, between all three of us, raised, at the last time I checked, probably at or just over £1,700.
1725 is when I last looked.
Which is quite amazing. And again, taking this opportunity here now to thank everyone who has donated. You know, and again, I think what that goes towards is, you know, we'll share some resources in the show notes for the podcast if anyone cares to read up. I think that's probably the best thing, rather than me read out on this podcast chapter and verse as to what SANS do as a charity. I don't know. I mean, Mike, I guess I'll come to you on this, because this is not your first rodeo in terms of doing the Golf for SANS challenge. So what's been your experience of doing this challenge and working with SANS?
So last year I was connected with Janelle Aldred, who is a broadcaster and a journalist, through a mutual connection of ours. And Janelle said, would Golf Monthly, who I was editor of at the time, would we be able to support the Golf for SANS challenge that she was going to get involved in? She'd been an ambassador for SANS for a long time. She lost her daughter in her teenage years, but has been an amazing advocate for SANS. And I said, well, yeah, we definitely can. And do you know what? My wife and I have experienced baby loss twice. So actually, between us, we said, why don't we get involved in the Golf for SANS challenge? Janelle was a relatively new golfer, but super keen. We met up, had a 9-hole round at her home course, Mill Hill, North London, and we just said, come on, let's do it. And we came up with, rather than trying to play multiple rounds, we thought, let's try and do something different. So I can't remember if Janelle or I came up with a slightly mad idea to play one hole at 18 different courses around North London. And we plotted out the route, got in touch with all the clubs. They were amazing, hosted us. In fact, one of the first people we spoke to, I think, was the club manager at Hampstead, who went, great idea, very happy to support you, but you're doing it the wrong way around. You want to start in London and work your way out. Don't start in outer London and work your way into sort of Hampstead and Highgate and those sort of clubs. They said, you'll be, coming up against School Run, it'll be horrific. So anyway, we did that about a year ago. I think it was early July last year. Again, raised some great money, and it was an amazing experience, really. It was, a day that I sort of feel very proud of, but also, brought a lot of emotions back to the surface. We lost our, sort of two children, Christopher in 2007 and Rose in 2010. So, long time ago. And I probably felt like I'd sort of put it to the back of my, thought about them all the time. I used to visit the graves. But yeah, it brought a lot of stuff back to the surface. And that's not a bad thing, because probably at the time, my wife and I just got on with life, because you have to. We were very fortunate. We had a daughter who was born before we lost the two babies. So it's like, well,
you've got no choice but to carry on.
Yeah, absolutely. And just sort of life goes on. Maybe we, sort of got over it too quickly. We certainly made some pretty seismic decisions, when it came to life choices. We sort of moved out of London, got a dog, all the sort of things. Probably I would advise anybody who is going through what the three of us and, thousands of people go through is don't make any snap decisions. They might seem like the right thing, and they might turn out to be the right thing, but just, we probably made some rash decisions.
It's funny that though, Mike, as well, because your experience of those snap decisions is very different to my decisions, those snap decisions as we were talking about earlier. And I'm like, our decision to move, if it wasn't really our decision to move, right? Bryony was in no condition to make a decision to move to Norfolk. I made that decision for us. And actually it turned out to be the best thing I could have done. And it's like the way in which these things sort of unfold and the circumstances we find ourselves in, I think fascinating, because it just goes to show that we're all very different. We're all complete individuals, and things are going to impact us all in such different ways. You know, like we talked about your dog earlier, right?
Yeah.
Like my dog, I would say, saved Bryony's life. And that, I'm not exaggerating with that as well, because she'd spent so long kind of in that dark place after Dylan was born, to the point where, you know, we then subsequently had another miscarriage after that, which we shouldn't have tried for another kid. It was too early to try for another kid, right? We recognise that. But it was only when she was, I can't remember if we talked about this we probably did talk about this on the podcast before, so I apologise to the listener if I'm repeating myself, but she got pregnant in the October. So Dylan was born in the May. She got pregnant in the October again. And we went for a scan just before Christmas, and they told us that it was a miscarriage and the baby had stopped developing and was no longer, you know, heartbeat wasn't going on, all of that sort of stuff. And she had to have the miscarriage removed on Christmas Eve. And it was 2 days before my 30th birthday. So, you know, selfishly at the time, I was like, well, this is a bit inconvenient for me, isn't it? But, you know, that's just the way my stupid brain worked back in those days, I suppose. But Bryony had never been under general anaesthetic before. And she'd said to me, subsequently, a few days afterwards, you know, she was obviously, all that time in the lead up, she's like, I don't really care if I don't wake up. But then she said, when they were starting to count down, she thought to herself, I hope I wake up. And that was like a defining moment for her. And then when she said that to me, I was like, we're just going to get a dog. You need something to focus on. You know, you're not working, you're not in the right place. You need something to focus on. So we went and got Barney in. After 3 months, she'd had enough of him. She's like, I want to go back to work now. So I was like, this is fine. You've trained him for 3 months. He's all right now. We can get a dog walker and stuff like that. So that kind of thing is, I mean, we're still lucky to have Barney. He's nearly 12 now. But we were talking a bit earlier about, you know, what do I do when he's not around? Because he is so integral to who we are as people that the thought of him not being about is it's just grim, I think.
Well, we lost Innes last year. Yeah, we got a grief dog as well. We got Mango. We already had Vinny, and then so we've grown the family with Mango, and there's 4 of us now. And what I'm about to share, I'll probably check with my wife Kim after we.
So we might edit this out. Yeah, fine.
No. Well, I might edit this out, but we are expecting again now. And, you know, we're 18 weeks pregnant. And, I think what we're talking about here now is a very, very important part in this conversation, because I especially feel like I feel this is important for us 3 as dads, and to all of our listeners, but especially those who are out there, you know, for example, those that we want to connect with in the kind of the Golf for Sands community or the Sands community, or going through this now, or it's very raw, or they've just gone through it. And I think, you know, what I'm experiencing at the moment is, and my wife and I are experiencing, is this kind of, this positivity of being pregnant again and the excitement and everything that goes with that. But it's the fear as well of something happening to this baby.
That never goes away, though, you know that, right?
No.
It never goes away. Even after they're born, if they're, you know, I'm obviously 100%, everything's going to be okay for you. This time it's going to work out and all that kind of stuff. But that fear about something going wrong never goes away. And it's something you just have to learn to live with. It's such a weird thing. And we will deal with it differently to women in our lives as well, right? They deal with that very, very differently.
But, you know, also, again, things that, you know, Ben and I talked about writing back in episode 2 of the GYH podcast was, you know, I remember when Ben said to me at the time, you know, because he was one of the first people I reached out to when we found out the worst news within us, and it led to us having the termination for medical reasons. And again, the amazing thing was, and it goes back to my point that I made right at the start of us recording this, is this shared experience is so powerful because I'd known for years through playing golf with Ben that he had experienced this. But if I'm being really honest, I remember one time we did the Ryder Cup thing in Dorset and you were talking about Jensen's condition. I think at the time you'd spoken about how he'd had a medical...
You stopped breathing at 6 weeks.
Stopped breathing. And like,
I
think you were talking about him and with that, and then, but then also the losses and things, and it kind of... It almost
you can't relate to it.
I can relate to it. It kind of went over my head a little bit, or it didn't hit me.
But people don't know what to say. No, you haven't experienced it. It's not like, sort of losing your mum, your dad. It's, as we've all said, and I know you've said it in previous podcasts, it's very sort of taboo subject. It's sort of, you can see people visibly.
It shocks people, doesn't it? Yeah.
Like, crikey, what do I say here?
Yeah.
Which makes it really difficult as well, right? Because it's a big part of my identity. Yeah. And then having to... I
feel like you're hiding it.
Yeah, a little bit. You do feel like that a little bit. And then sometimes I'll then have the pang of guilt. Like when people say to me, how many children have you got?
Yeah.
The simplest answer I can give is I have one.
Yeah.
Right? I have one son. But that's not true. But it's much easier for me to say that and then not have to explain it. I mean, it depends who the person is, right? Because if I'm thinking I'm going to end up having some sort of, whether it's a professional relationship with this person, whether I can see a friendship growing there and all that kind of stuff, then it quickly, I'm not very good at hiding it.
No.
But then equally, if it's a fleeting conversation I'm having with someone, I'm not going to do that. Whereas Bryony, on the other hand, she'll say, this is who I am. I admire her for that, really, because she's just like, I know how shit it is. So why shouldn't other people see that this is a thing for me?
Yeah.
But I
was the reason I brought this up was because you said something to me at the time, Ben, about how my mental health might need to take a back seat for a while. And I know now, especially what you mean by that, and we've talked about it since. And I think why that bowled me over so much is because you guys both know that, and podcast listeners will know, I've talked quite a bit about my own mental health, my challenges with it. But now I realise more than ever that actually, I really have to show up for my wife in a way that I've not necessarily had to show up. I've always needed to show up for my wife, if you know what I mean. But it's like I know how, I just see how much this, the loss has affected her. It's affected me. It's affected us in our relationship. I feel this is important for me to talk about. And I'm just sharing this. I'm not asking you or inviting you guys to share personal things about your relationships unless you wish to. But it's just important that I touch on that as well, because again, in all the things that Sans sent me before we did this, it talks about some of the really almost grim and very difficult things that come out of a loss, and I think that's whether it's issues, it's just challenges in relationships, or it's pregnancy, or trying to conceive again after loss. But I think I, for one, partly obviously wanted to do this Golf for Sans challenge today, in memory of my son, in memory of your sons and daughter as well, and to do this together, but then also to give hope and inspiration to others out there who have been through this. And actually I'll just give a quick shout out now, because we got in someone called Matt Payton. Matt, shout out to you, got in touch via the golfyourselfhealthy.com website. He is also doing the Golf for Sans challenge in honour of his and his wife's daughter, and they are playing at Ingraborn Links in Essex. Do you know it, Mike?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. Yeah. I haven't got to know it.
With his wife Kate acting as caddy.
And you had no idea what that was.
I had no idea what it was. What is it, Ben?
It's basically a person that goes, we'd like to think 250 yards out into the distance, but probably not so far as that.
Maybe 150.
And then they spot your ball. So when you're hitting it, they then point out where your ball is.
We could have done with it.
So, I was about to say, Mike, so actually, Matt and Kate, if you're listening to this, Ben could definitely use your services, because we all could.
If you come to Prince's, you'll find a suitable collection of Pro V1s kicking around that you can probably resell for a decent value. They've only been hit once. So they're in good nick.
Absolutely.
I mean, the other thing I would say about what we've done today is we talked about this, we joked about this, is like how easy is it, or how difficult is it, should I say, for us to have asked for the sponsorship money in the first place, given that it's doing something that we love, right?
Yeah.
And like I've struggled a little bit to come to terms with how am I going to ask the people that I've asked to sponsor me. So, like, I know you've thanked everyone, but I just want to thank everyone who sponsored us again, because we have had a phenomenal day, right?
Yeah.
And I think about all of the people that do some really, like, there's a guy who's the fellow who ran the length of Africa, right? None of that can have been fun.
No.
Right, all right, he raised a lot more money.
This is Britain's hardest geezer.
Yes. Yeah. So he ran the length of Africa over like 6 months or something ridiculous like that.
And we played 54 holes of golf.
We played 54 holes of golf at a phenomenal golf course with the weather really nice. And I mean, I had to try and lean into a little bit of the fact that I was woefully unprepared for it. I think I probably was, but I think we walked 20 miles today. Mm-hmm. That's quite a long way.
And I mean, okay, let's try and justify.
Yeah, that's what I mean. We need. I think we need to make people realise how.
Because I've written. I have journaled some things from today, right? And so I think, speaking personally, and I'll ask you guys to sort of share your own reflections in a moment. But first 18 holes, I think some nice golf got played. 9 holes, 19 to 36. First 9 holes on the second loop of 18 started out pretty well. Wheels started to come off for me on the second 9 on that 18-hole loop. Slog is the word I've got written down here. I can't read my own handwriting, but yeah, I think the highlight of, I mean, there were just a few funny things that happened. I think towards the end of, like, when we got to about hole 33, the golf had clearly started to escape our minds, and Ben, for instance, was more talking about what's on the lunch menu, said that when we're in Sandwich, we need to have a sandwich in Sandwich.
I was the only one of us who had a sandwich as well, wasn't I?
You had a tuna
for lunch.
sandwich.
Chicken goujons for lunch.
I mean, I think although it was...
And you had a chicken burger.
Well, look, I mean, as much as, as much I love wordplay as much as the next guy, so have a sandwich in Sandwich is great, but that was a good menu, Ben. And a tuna sandwich. Good. I mean, come on. You could have done
There's nothing wrong with a classic tuna and cucumber sandwich on brown bread with some chips on the side, right?
I think what also tickled me a lot, and I recorded this a couple, maybe 2 or 3 times. So, Mike, you listened to the very first podcast that Ben and I did, and others will have heard. Ben has a habit of giving you a commentary when he's standing over a golf shot and saying, right, watch this now. I'm going to hit this 8-iron. It's going to release out strong. It's going to release really nice.
I reckon I did
and
that
then
once
seconds
today.
later, it was like,
once where it actually worked.
That didn't go well.
Once where it actually worked.
That didn't work out for me.
However, I did provide some sound advice for Mr. Harris when he was coming to... he literally stood over a ball and said, right, don't fat this, Mike. And I had to say to him, Mike, you're going to hit this pure. All right, you're going to pure this one, and it's going to go exactly where you wanted it to go. And I think you were maybe 8 feet from the pin when it finished up. You're welcome. Right.
Thank you.
I also have track here of, this was obviously my guilty conscience coming out here, no footage of Mike. Ben and I were in absolute awe of Mike's ability to not only play good golf, but to actually just like be snapping away, taking great pictures too. And there's plenty of footage of me and Ben out there on Instagram, but I hope we came good for you in the end, Mike.
Yeah, no, you did. And listen, as I think I said to you earlier, that's my creative outlet. I enjoy it. And for a long time in my life, I've tried to not make it the Mike Harris show, which I'm afraid is sort of one of my terrible traits. So,
You're in good company here, mate.
Yeah.
This is pretty much what we do, right?
So it's quite nice to be the sort of resident photographer today.
What I've got written above that, Mike, is I've said, I take it back, no footage of Mike. If you remember, Mike, so my favourite hole from today is the 9th hole on the shore.
And here we go.
So birdied it once. Mike also birdied it as well. When I birdied it, that was the very first 9 holes of the day that we played, I think. Yeah. I had the tripod in the fairway recording me and you, Mike, hitting our shots in the green. And I subsequently left the tripod plugged into the ground on the fairway, and didn't realise this until we came off the green. You went to getting coffees, I had a massive panic, like, where's my phone? Hang on, where's the tripod? Like, the greenkeeper's coming up in his Toro up the fairway, kind of looking at me, like, pointing back, being like, mate, you've left your...
I did get your birdie.
So I take it back, Mike. There's 7 minutes of which about a minute is you and me, and then the other 6 minutes are just like the camera staring into the abyss of the ninth green with nobody on it.
Lost
basically.
my ball at that point. So.
Any other moments that matter, or sort of eagle has landed moments, or just little nostalgic moments that you can look back on today? Any moments that either of you guys had today that will stick in the mind for a while?
Just a lot of self-deprecating chat, really, which I do like. I think that playing golf with people who, take their misfortunes too seriously, it's quite tiresome. It's like, listen, we don't play this for a living. We are average golfers at best. You are going to hit some bad shots. Don't, act like it's the first bad shot you've hit, or that it's, sort of a bigger calamity. It's like, you've hit a bad shot, you will probably hit another one on the next hole. I enjoyed the banter between you two. That was very good. It's, obviously got a great friendship, and I think golf, offers friends the opportunity to both support each other and laugh at each other on pretty much, every hole. And there was definitely a lot of that. I think the camaraderie was great. Yeah, and just the way we kept each other going, because definitely probably sort of just into the third 18, we were all feeling quite tired.
I started to feel slightly delirious, I'll be honest with you. And it did make me chuckle how grumpy you two were in the last sort of 4 or 5 holes.
Well, I mean, I couldn't quite believe, Ben, I heard you utter the words, I think I could go another 18.
Yeah. I said I think I could do more. I could do more. Do you know what I was honestly thinking about doing, right? So you know where the shore course finishes just outside where we're staying tonight? I thought, I'll get Chris to drive the car up and I'll play those 6 holes. I'll meet him at the lodge. And then I thought, well, it's almost 7 o'clock. By the time I get there, it'll be too late. I won't have time for a shower. So I went to. But I did seriously consider it. And I'm surprised because when we went out to play that start the 37th hole, I came down the stairs, a spiral staircase at the thing, and I was in agony coming down the stairs. My knee was just like, it's going to explode at some point. But then I medicated, did a bit of stretching, and I was fine. And I felt all right. And I think the thing for me, the good thing for me about this course is it's not particularly up and down. You're not going up hills and down hills. So as I was saying to you, Mike, when my knee starts to hurt, when I start going downhill, that's when the pressure's on my knee, and I really struggle in that situation. But it's being a links course, it's quite... I know I've played links courses that are actually quite up and down as well, but this one is not. I mean, there's lots of undulations in the fairways, which certainly makes it a challenge, because every time you're stepping up to your ball, you're getting a downhill line, uphill line, all that kind of stuff. But I quite enjoyed your turn of pace after my trolley, which I failed to point in the correct direction. It was like, you were impressed with that, were you? It was very, very good. Turn the clock back, and I used the putter to stop it going too far. It was excellent. If I hadn't got it, I was giving up at that point. No, he would have just careered down the hill into the bushes. I mean, I'd have just looked at it and go, Ben, you're trying off that. You actually just got there in time. Turned on a six. Just got there in time. Yeah. So I did enjoy you two getting grumpy. It made me smile. I thought it was quite funny, but I could tell that you were both. Well, you're always just hungry. That's Chris's thing. Is always he needs to eat. I think I eat a lot. No, he just packs it away, doesn't it? Relentless. But I think from the 4th hole, he was concerned about breakfast. Yeah. So to give me grief about lunch when you were like, what's the breakfast
Rich
like?
Coming
Mike?
from you.
Yeah. He was eating Reese's peanut butter.
Oh no, yeah, like
at the time.
6:30 in the morning.
When are we going to have breakfast?
Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it was. That was two highlights for me, I would say.
And Mike, I agree with your point on camaraderie very much. Though I think there was a bump in the road moment for the camaraderie over dinner, because this is Friday the 14th of June, and it won't be lost on people that the European Championships started tonight. And when we came up to record, Scotland were 3-0 down to Germany.
There was half-time.
And I had to endure a few GIFs and memes and just getting a bit rinsed over dinner. I tell you, the clincher, which you both resisted, is neither of you have said it's coming home. So,
no, nor will I. Nor will I. Not until
good.
it's actually on the plane on the way back.
Yeah, exactly. Because had you done, I would have been hot-tailing it and I would have been out of here on the way back to Wales.
Fair.
But, look, I think, I've done a bit of talking again, sort of reflecting on, talking about why I've done this today. I just want to give you guys the opportunity again as well. Is there anything more that you guys wanted to share, or anything that I feel like I've hogged the platform and the stage a bit in terms of?
Yeah, I think I really respect and admire the way that both of you have talked about, your losses and how useful probably, it would have been for me to have heard a podcast. Podcasts weren't a thing really 14 years ago, probably. To have heard, an experience from a peer, if you like, because I just didn't know what to expect, who to turn to. It's just sort of really, some of my mates were brilliant, but they didn't really know what to say. They just sort of said, let's go out for a game of golf, or let's go for a pint, or, and they check in on me. But until you've been through something like baby loss, you won't know what to say. And I think being able to listen to the podcasts that Kris, you did, and then the one, Ben, you did, Kris, I found that even 14, 17 years on, very useful. It's helped make sense of things for me, as I sort of, sort of still come to terms with the fact that, lost, 2 children. We should be a family of 5, and, and we're not. And just helps sort of acknowledge that. And I just, it's not, I never wanted to brush it under the carpet, but it just felt like, particularly, when we lost Christopher, everybody rallied around. We had quite a big funeral. The support was amazing. And then the second time round, when we lost Rose, I just don't think people knew. It's like, oh my God, how could, people were probably thinking, how can this happen again to them? And the reality is, of course, it does happen, to many, many families. It happens, multiple times. And to have the obviously the resources and support that SANS can offer, but also I think crucially to be able to hear those, peer experiences are really, super useful.
Yeah. And, something I'm very, very grateful for is to both of you for how you've supported this podcast in your own individual ways since it's been launched, because I think I had this, call it what you will, almost this kind of self-doubt, this imposter syndrome. Not so much about, because I love this, I love doing a podcast and putting out this kind of, this content, but it's more when I had this idea around, talking about how golf was helping me through grief, for instance, I thought, is this going to come across a bit far-fetched to people in terms of even committed and avid golfers around how can golf really help you in this way? But, as I was telling you guys today, Craig McKee, who was my guest on episode 4 of this podcast, is a prime example of someone who talks about this idea of, golf being his release and being the thing that, like you were saying there, Mike, when he lost his daughter, he would go out and play golf. And to this day, having just been back up in Scotland the other day and attending a charity golf day that he hosts in memory of his daughter, I saw firsthand how this game has this kind of amazing power just to channel positive spirit. And I hope today has given you, Mike, a chance to remember Christopher and Rose and honour them in your way. And in your case, Dylan and Ben. Mike, you have to remind me your daughter's name. Your
Elizabeth, yeah.
Elizabeth.
Yeah. So
I love how in the course of the conversation we've had today, you speak very proudly of her. Mm-hmm. You talk about what she's going on to study. I love that she's going to study to become a midwife. I find that quite amazing.
Yeah. And it was in her application. I think it was, obviously a huge motivation to see, or for her.
Oh, just got cramp in the back of my leg. That's horrendous. See, that's why this is hard.
Yeah.
54 holes. I'm not just staging this for the sake of
the Just Giving page will stay open for a few more days.
Mike, sorry. In the course of our application, I haven't lost track of what you were saying there. Sorry, seriously, go on.
Stand up and stretch it out. It's fine. Me and Michael carry on.
I thought somebody'd come into the red like an intruder.
You know, it's like a balloon goes off and like you get in the middle of the night. Mike, sorry.
Yeah, no. The Elizabeth reference that obviously, you know, her mum, my wife, you know, lost 2 babies, and that basically we had amazing midwife care for when we lost Christopher, but didn't have great midwife care when we lost Rose, changeover in shifts, and just wasn't a great experience at what is obviously an incredibly difficult time. And I think, makes me immensely proud that that's a route that she's looking to explore. If she goes on to be a midwife, I'm sure she'll be an amazing one. So,
It's really interesting, that, isn't it? Because one of Bryony's closest school friends is a midwife at Norwich and Norfolk. And it's led to us, obviously, the stuff that, like, Bryony's raised a lot of money for the hospital and things like that, as well as some of the other stuff she's been doing when she worked for an estate agent. I can't remember what it was, but they raised some money to basically buy a bit of kit that would help with some scanning stuff. And, you know, we'd get talking to some of the midwives there, and like some of the reasons that they would get involved is because they'd either experienced loss themselves or they'd known a friend of theirs who'd been through that experience and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's shows incredible strength of character to want to step into that, because that is a tough job. For all of the amazing things that you do, we all know that it's not always like that, right?
Completely. Kim and I were talking about this just the other day, in fact, and how if you consider, you know, it's just like a shout out to the midwives out there as well, because, you know, again, like if you think about the world we live in the UK and all the bashing and the narrative around the NHS and stuff, but for me, the problem in the National Health Service here is not the talent that's in it, because actually what we experienced, you know, in the bereavement suite or the ward, I think the maternity ward ultimately that we were in, we had a wonder. Yeah, it sounds weird to say that, I'm sure, but to someone that's experienced baby loss, who's had a very well looked after and sort of good experience, it won't sound strange to say we had a very wonderful experience with Innes being born. Yes, he was stillborn, but the point I'm making is the midwives that we had, the experiences they created for us, making the handprints and the footprints, the reading him a bedtime story. And Kim and I were talking about how the mental load, like the what that must do to the midwives, you know, to have to go through that day. You know, they're not immune to, you know, sort of, they're not superhuman. You know, I think they must. But I've got so much respect and admiration for them, and I think it's, like I say, it's great, Mike, that, you know, wish Elizabeth well with that. And then I think I noticed today, I don't know if I've noticed this before, but your golf towel.
Yes. Jensen's was my Father's Day present from last year, actually.
Do you want to share with the listener as well about Jensen's donation?
He donated to us today as well. I think I mentioned this to you. He had specifically told Bryony what he wanted it to say, and he's got a little Go Henry account, so every time he does his chores, he gets a bit of money into his account, and he used his own money to sponsor us £10 for our thing. And those are the sorts of things that sort of melt me a little bit, I'll be honest, because...
Melted me, for sure. Just like, I've been tracking the Just Giving page all day, and when I saw that one, I was like, whoa, that got
he's a very he's very in tune with his feelings, and that's quite a cool thing. For an 8-year-old to be kind of that way inclined is, I think, probably testament to his mum more than me. But yeah, I'm very proud. He's a good little boy.
Well, Ben, I think, you know, like I say, we've known each other a while now, but I think, you know, in the time that we've been interacting around Golf Yourself Healthy and things, again, thanks for how you supported me through this. You know, I think you don't give yourself enough credit, I don't think, for how you've kind of, you know, it really struck me when we had that conversation at Royal Norwich about how you just talked about, you know, how I think you were saying you've changed well, you have. I mean, we do change. These very traumatic life events kind of give you this sort of fork in the road, or this crossroad, and you've clearly, I think, you're showing up for me, for example, and you supported me with some of the very complex, often ugly feelings on that spectrum of wild emotions that you experience, right, when you lose a child. So no, thank you for that.
You're welcome. And what I would say to you is, as much as I'm doing that for you, I'm also doing it for Dylan's memory, right? Because it makes you feel like that loss wasn't for nothing. If I can help somebody else, or if I can give people some clarity on what to expect. I mean, that was the first conversation we had, right? We talked about what can you expect from the fact that Kim's going to give birth to Innes, and there's not going to be any sound or anything. And, we've all watched Mike, you had kids, you knew what it was like being in that delivery room, hearing a baby cry and all of that kind of stuff. I just remember when Jensen was born and hearing him cry and just literally like bursting into tears, I think, because I was just like, I was in such a weird way, you're kind of always expecting the worst in those sort of situations. And I think I've said to you before, like, Bryony was just like, was so relaxed throughout that pregnancy. And I thought, well, that must be a sign that everything's all right. But the reality is she was so relaxed through that pregnancy because her expectation was that everything was going to go wrong. So if she was expecting everything to go wrong, she couldn't be disappointed. And then actually to hear him cry when he was born was just like, I can't even begin to describe it. But yeah, and as much as I do stuff like this to help people who've been through similar things, I'd be lying if I said it was for them. It's probably more for me to be able to actually make sure that Dylan's loss is not, it wasn't for nothing, really.
Yeah, completely.
Or the loss of Dylan, I should say. Sorry.
Before I sort of
time to go to bed.
Bring us up the 18th and round this out.
Nice.
Anything either of you wanted to add or share before?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a question, Chris, actually, because when we spoke initially, we talked about whether might do a Golf for Sands challenge. You said, I know you were sort of rightly wanted to understand what was the emotional impact of it. And listen, we only finished playing golf a few hours ago. I'm not, can't expect you to give a definitive answer, but it was something, again, sort of doing it last year with Janelle, challenge with Janelle, and then doing it. I thought long and hard about it because it does take its emotional toll. And I think, there's, again, I thought, do I really want to do it? Do I want to put myself through that? And I thought, yes, actually I do, because it's, number one, it's doing some good, raising some money, raising awareness. It's making the topic of baby loss hopefully a fraction less taboo. And yeah, want to, as you say, as you've said, it's sort of, it's part of remembering, for me, Christopher and Rose. But I know that it will be something that will be real front and center in my mind, as actually it has, they have been particularly for the last sort of couple of months when I knew we were going to do the challenge. Just wondered how you were feeling right here, right now about stuff, how it's made you feel.
Yeah. Thanks for asking, Mike. Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, because I do remember that, like you say, after our first conversation, you brought up the Golf for Sounds challenge and the possibility of us doing it together. And I think as I recall it, my hesitation, if that is the right word, that I had was, I think, as again, I've told you guys, and I'm sharing more on this podcast over time, is my nature is I'm a very kind of like an all or nothing kind of person, right? And I jumped into certain things after losing Innes, which in hindsight I don't think were the right uses of my energy and whatever energy I did have. And I think what I've learned through this podcast, interviewing other people who have, never mind just their experiences in golf and how they're using golf to overcome grief and things, but this idea of you get this, I experienced this positive surge of hope and inspiration when I lost Innes, to such an extent that I thought, right, I'm going to go and create Golf Yourself Healthy. But I'd be lying to you if I said that it doesn't kind of freak me out every single time I go on air with this thing and tell his story. Whether that's because of the shame that I live with, that we didn't give, he didn't have a chance to live. We had a termination for medical reasons, which Kim and I stand by completely, because his prognosis was really bad. Like he wouldn't have made it, But I think it's whether it's the shame or it's the fact it's taboo, like you say, Mike. In this world that we live in today, we live in quite a polarized world today. And on social media, and you see, like I think I've shared this with you, Ben. I had a worry when I kind of started up Golf Yourself Healthy that if I expose myself in this way, if I put myself out there in this way, the trolls will come and get me or whatever kind of thing. But I think, going back to something Ben just said a minute ago about why are we doing these things and who are we doing them for? I always go back to Innes's funeral. I said, that I would honour his name and always speak his name and do things, as I like to say, for him to kind of live vicariously through me, And I think that's what I'm trying to do here now. And yeah, I'm very, very glad we've done this Golf for Science challenge. I would, like you say, Mike, it's maybe, again, this is part of my issue, is like I just go, oh yeah, right, let's do it again next year. Let's do it every year until forever, guys. And let's go through that whole awkwardness of asking people for money again. And like, I think that's an important one to touch on as well, because I think I don't know if it's a British thing or it's like we're just too polite about these things, but it's, yeah, I don't know. I care a lot about what other people think, as you might have gathered.
Whereas I couldn't give a shit. Just don't care.
But that's probably why
we get on quite well.
A good double act as well.
I think so. And I think the reality is the way in which our dynamic works is you are a more serious person than I am, and I can temper your seriousness, and you can temper my idiocy.
You see, out of interest, Mike. I mean, we've known first time we met in person today.
Yeah.
But how do I come? Because I think I agree. I am a serious person. I'm a very deeply analytical forensically analytical person sometimes. But I can have a real laugh as well. There's a very, very candid and sort of like slapstick, jovial side to me as well. So, I hope you've experienced that too, Mike.
I think you could have a great dynamic. And I'm probably somewhere in the middle, probably closer to, if you like, Ben's,
laid back attitude.
Well, not sort of laid back, but just sort of like
uptight attitude over there.
No, it's like I don't really, if I feel like I'm being true to myself, then that's good enough for me. It's sort of I don't feel like I do stuff to either please other people or particularly don't try and do anything to upset other people or make other people feel awkward. I just do feel like if I can look at myself in the mirror, a bit of a cliche, and say, do you know what? I did it for these reasons. I'm, happy with my motivation for it. I've sort of weighed up the pros and cons, but actually, really, it's somebody else's problem if they have a problem with,
I suppose to sort of temper my view on that I don't give a shit about what people think of me. I think you're right, Mike. It's more about making sure that I don't want people to dislike me. But if someone chooses to dislike me for something that I've done, I can't really do anything to control that. That's just down, and I'm not going to change who I am. I'm not suggesting you do, but I think you put more value on that. You want to be. Well, everyone wants to be liked, don't they? Let's not. Yeah. Let's not be.
No, for sure. But I think, again, what you asked me, Mike, maybe leads into. I hope it doesn't come across as a tangent, because I don't think it is. I think it's very much interlinked. But, when we all arrived in the car park this morning, we were chatting about, Mike, you're a committed listener to this podcast, and I very much appreciated, your feedback and your very honest feedback about how you found the different, episodes and content and themes that we've covered so far. And we were chatting about how I think certainly in those early episodes, and I'll say this now because I've said to both of you guys, I think probably this episode will probably be about what the last one will do for this season. I feel this is a really good, for me personally, this is a great place to almost like round out season 1 of the Golf Yourself Healthy podcast, because there's this kind of like, there's like a closure in a way for me personally, if you know what I mean. Because I think me doing it in large part to begin with was because I needed this kind of outlet, and it was doing it for Innes and things like that. But I was saying to you, Mike, how I wonder sometimes if, the conversations that we have been having with certain guests have been heavy. They've been intense. And I think I remain convinced that there's a place for that out there. And it's like, it's not, none of the episodes have been contrived, I don't think. There's all been this central theme about golf being good for you, everyone having their own individual story. But I don't know what you guys think, but I think whether it's British culture again or whatever it is, and taboos and not talking about grief, not talking about mental health or whatever, I think people shy away from, either they shy away from maybe listening into things that are going to hit a nerve. But to be fair, I will say this as well, and I have stopped to reflect on this, is it's only been very recently, about, say, a year on from losing Innes, have I even thought to listen to podcasts that talk explicitly about baby loss, for example. Because I remember Kim and I were talking about this again the other day. It was like within weeks of losing Innes, we were driving over to West Wales to stay in an Airbnb for the weekend. She had a podcast on, I think it's like TFMR Mamas or something like that. And I was like, Kim, I can't, I need you to switch this off because I can't listen to this right now. And I just wonder if there's an element of that. It's too close to home for some people.
Yeah, quite possibly.
I think the person who analyses far too much in you is talking a little bit there as well. But I think what you have to realise is that people listen to things that are either relevant to them or that they're interested in, right? So if I think about podcasts that I listen to, like I'll give you an example. One of the ones I listen to, I haven't really listened to much recently, but it's the Off Menu podcast, which is Ed Gamble and James Acaster, right?
Oh, yeah.
Their process is they do a thing where they bring a guest on and they ask them what their dream menu would be. Right, so they go through all of the things that they do. It's quite funny. But it depends on who the guest is as to whether I'm going to listen or not. All right, so if there's a guest there that I think, I'd be quite interested to know what they've got to say, or if there's a guest, I don't know who it is, I think, well, I'll find out who that is. But if there's a guest in there and I think, I don't really like this material they do, like I'm not a fan of their comedy or whatever it is, I'm not going to listen to that episode. And I think where the podcast has gone from, talking about our losses and things like that, there are people that have tuned in that have experienced similar things. Where there's other things where we've gone from, all of the various people you've had, there'll be different audiences for those things. Yeah. And we've talked about the ones that we've done together since then that have been probably more of a upbeat and not so serious and jokey thing. They have their own audience as well, right? Because people will want to listen to shit stuff, not shit stuff, but heavy stuff when it's relevant to them. It's quite difficult to draw the audience into you're not always going to have the same audience in for everyone. You will for some, because I listen to everyone. I don't like listening to the ones that I'm in, weirdly, because I don't like the sound of my own voice. But I do like the sound of my own voice, but I like the sound of my own voice in my own ears, not the recording. As you can tell, right? But I've listened to everyone because I'm interested in understanding it from the golf perspective. Yeah. Whereas you'll have people that will come in that will talk about, so, if there's people that have had experience with DiGeorge syndrome, that might be something that they come in and listen to that podcast,
it's
right?
Real life relatable stuff, right?
Yeah. So I think you're always going to have that element of hit and miss, but it's trying to balance out that, have more hits than misses. Yeah. And I think, that will only happen as you ramp up the different library of people that you'll speak to and the different types of conversations you'll have, because what you'll then end up finding is that actually people like the type of conversation rather than the conversation itself.
I know we probably want to stop recording because we're going on. I'm sure you guys want to go to bed, but I mean, Mike, if I can ask you, because I've not really outright asked you this question at all in the time I've known you or even today, but like, given what your background, what you do in, say, the golf industry and golf media, like, do you see much of, either historically or more so now in the modern day, golf being talked about in the way that we're trying to talk about it in Golf Yourself Healthy?
No, it's a relatively new thing. Or it's a relatively new thing for, I think, the industry and golfers to acknowledge the physical and mental health benefits of the game and to celebrate them, and for that to be a reason to play the game, and for them people to share their stories of how golf has helped them in their life. And it's great. And the more we talk about it, the more people realize golf is a good crutch to lean on.
It's a good foundation to build on, I think, isn't it?
100%. Yeah, for sure. And I think it's, the more podcasts like this where, I say, golf is for all of the guests and for you, Kris, it's obviously been such a transformative thing, but, part of the grief process, part of the, way to deal with difficult moments in your life, whether that's grief or whether that's, mental health challenges, relationship difficulties, whatever it might be. Golf offers a lot. It really does. And the more we talk about it, the more people go, oh yeah, that's one of the reasons I love golf, or that's the reason.
Exactly. And I think it's the variety of things it offers you as well, right? If you need to escape, you can go and play golf for a bit, right? If you're having things that you don't want to have to deal with at home, you can go and play golf for a bit. If you need to get away to think about or to reflect on those things, golf gives you that opportunity. If you want to go and play golf with people who've been through similar situations to you, golf gives you that opportunity. There aren't really many other sports, I think, that allow you to do that, have that plethora of different things that it can help you with. And I think the hardest thing about what you're driving and that I'm hopefully supporting you with is getting people to understand that golf part, right? So golfers get it. We all get it. As golfers, we understand what it is, to what those benefits can be. But people who sit outside that sport, they don't get it. So the only way they're going to get it is if they go and pick up a golf club and start playing and hit one good shot, right? And that'll help us immensely. So everyone who's listening, who's only listening for the content, go and play golf.
Or I think that golf then occupies a more positive, there's more positivity around the game. Sort of, it's not just all the negatives, all the stereotypes that, golf has deservedly picked up over the years. That actually, it's always been a platform for good. It's always been a great social tool. It's been a great, sort of platform for good physical and mental health. And it's now golf starting to get a reputation for that it deserves. And that then I think people who are not golfers are more positive about the game. That then helps, I think, people who are tried the game and go, well, actually, is it really for me? To hear people outside are going, oh yeah, golf's a good thing. And
I think that's where the things like we were talking about the other day with the Tiger Woods thing that he's got in Florida, all of those types of things that are kind of the halfway house between full-scale golf and easy to pick up golf are really key to that, right? Like Top Golf's been massive here it's been getting it's a good few years now. Yeah. And I've gone to Top Golf and played, semi-golf, I would say it probably is really, with people who've never picked up a club before, and they've really enjoyed themselves, right? And I think that's I think that's where, yes, it's great that golf clubs are becoming much more acceptable. The diversity and all of that kind of stuff is definitely, and the inclusion is definitely improving from a golf perspective. But I think there's a real opportunity for that middle ground thing to begin. I've seen loads of like crazy golf stuff like popping up in shopping centres and things like that, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, completely.
I don't think people should undervalue the way that's like a gateway, isn't it?
Totally.
Yeah. No. Into the sport.
No, well, I think before we do wrap this, there's a couple of final things I'll say. I mean, I think this will probably be a nice episode just to round out season 1. And then I'm using this time method. I'll take a couple of weeks off, maybe just to sort of, doing these episodes like we were just talking about before because of just some of the nature of the conversations we've been having, but I've got a lot from them. I think for me it's achieved what I wanted it to at a very personal level. I'm going to take a bit of time just to, I've already got plenty of guests lined up that I'll be actually recording with over the next few weeks, but and they'll go out maybe probably into sort of July time, I would imagine. But looking forward, just having a bit of time to decompress, but then also times to think about what the future of Golf Yourself Healthy looks like. I'm sure it's got a bright future, but look forward to continuing to do podcast episodes with both of you, because we've made it a more regular thing. Ben, Mike, all being well, we've got another one to look forward to in August and a round of golf to go with it. But just a final couple of things. So one, for example, again, just the evidence of how this podcast, of how Golf Yourself Healthy is having an impact on people, and not just committed golfers, those who have no real relationship with the game. They're getting stuff out of it from a life perspective. So my wife and I were up in Scotland just the other week, and we were at this friend's barbecue, and our friend Lauren came over to speak to me. An example of someone who's been listening. Her husband's golf daft. Doesn't listen to the podcast. Cheers, mate. We'll work on that, won't we, Cammy? But funnily enough, so he's the golfer, but she's the one that's been listening. And I said to her, what have you been getting out of it then, Laura? And she said, it goes to this golf widow thing that we've been talking about, Ben. She's like, I now get it. I appreciate what it means to men, for example, to have this for their mental health. That for me was quite huge. Yeah. Actually, because I thought, well, that's kind of tick that box, so that's mission accomplished, because that's part of, if that message is coming across, then it's like raising an awareness for that kind of physical and mental health benefits of the game. But then also, I'm going to read out a review that we just had recently on Apple Podcasts from, I think this means, again, being more honest than I maybe should be, it's one of the first reviews I think we've had from someone that I don't know. Like, a lot of the reviews that we've had so far, written reviews, have been from family and friends and things who are maybe naturally more inclined to say nice things about it. But
not my family, they wouldn't.
What's that?
Not my family, they wouldn't.
Yeah.
Glad I haven't told
them.
But
this is from the avatar, the sort of the profile name goes by Sans Per Sutherland. Do you know what Sans Per means in French?
Oh, I don't know it.
Mike?
No. My mum will.
Without fear.
Okay.
So I like that. Just random trivia for you there and Golf Yourself Healthy. Top tier podcast, says Sans Per Sutherland. Top tier podcast, thought-provoking and enjoyable. Authentic and inspiring discussions on life's challenges and the positive outcomes that can arise from them, mixed with a healthy love for the game and enjoyable banter. As someone brand new to the game, GYH is a very approachable listen with some great guests and insights. Love what you're doing. Keep it going.
Oh, nice.
Great.
Yeah, that's very good.
So, yeah.
I didn't write
I
that,
felt very, very uplifted reading that the other day, because, again, that kind of made me go, right, yeah, this is resonating, and it's actually working. So, gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you both.
Thank you
very much, both for today and for doing this podcast. I'll let you go to bed now.
God, I'm so tired. My legs are killing me.
Thank you so much for listening. Before you go, please, as a reminder, make sure to follow us on your podcast platform of choice, and maybe also go over to golfyourselfhealthy.com and get in touch using the contact tab. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your feedback on the podcast and also your ideas for future podcast episodes. But until the next time, always remember to embrace the rough and forever cherish the fairway.